Today is day 2 of inverse of a function. We're going to go over function composition. It says where elements from the range of one function are used as the domain for another. So the y values of the first function are the x values of the second function. Let's start with number 1. For these, we're given f of x and g of x. It says find f of g of 2. So we're going to start with the innermost parentheses. So that would be g of 2. G of 2 means that for the function g, instead of x, we are writing 2. So that is written like this. We're rewriting the function, but this time instead of x, we are writing a 2 for every x we see. So g of 2 is equal to 2 squared plus 1. That would be 2 squared, which is 4, plus 1, which is 5. And now we are going to do the f of g of 2. Remember that g of 2 is 5. So now we're doing f of 5. That means for the function f, every time we see an x, instead of writing x, we're writing a 5. So 2 parentheses 5 minus 3. And that is 10 minus 3, which is 7. Let's move to the next problem. So here we're starting with g of b. So in the function g, we're plugging in b for every x we see. This is g of b. Now we need to do f of g of b. So now rewrite f, and then g of b is b squared plus 1. So this means for the function f, every time we see an x, instead of writing x, we're writing b squared plus 1. Okay, and now we go ahead and distribute. So 2 times b squared, which would be 2b squared, and then 2 times 1, which would be 2, and minus 3. Combine that and we get, 2b squared minus 1. Now I want you to go ahead and try part C on your own. For the next part, we're going to learn how to tell whether or not two functions are inverses of each other. So it says when we have two functions, f of x and g of x, it says they are inverses if f of g of x is equal to x and g of f of x is equal to x for all values of x in the domains of the functions. So now in exercises 2 through 6, we need to determine whether the functions are inverses of each other. So let's go ahead and do the function composition. So write f of g of x. So here we're going to start off with f, and we're plugging in g of x. So remember that this means for every x we see in the function f, instead of x, we're plugging in what this is, which is x plus 1 over 3. So go ahead and do that. Okay, so this is what we get. Here, if you notice, this 3 and this 3 are going to cancel out. So we're going to be left with x plus 1 minus 1. And then the 1 minus 1 are going to cancel out. So we're left with x. So it looks like it might be an inverse, but remember we need to check the other part. We need to do the other composition, which is g of f of x. So let's try and do the same procedure. Okay, so remember this means that for the function g, every time we see an x, instead of writing x, we're going to write 3x minus 1. So go ahead and do that. If you notice here, This is a -1 and a +1, so that's going to cancel out. And we're left with 3x over 3, and the 3 and the 3 are going to cancel out, so we get x. So f of g of x is x, and g of f of x is also x. So that means that yes, these two functions are inverses of each other. Let's go ahead and move on to number 3. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to start off with f of g of x and go ahead and plug in. For function f, every time we see an x, instead of writing x, we're writing 5x plus 1 over 4. So go ahead and do that. If you notice here, this 4 and this 4 are going to cancel out. So you're going to be left with 5x plus 1 over 5 minus 1. And it looks like there is no way that we can make this equal to x. So that means that there is no way that these two functions are inverses of each other. Now I want you to try to do number 4 and 5 on your own. And now I'm going to do number 6 with you. It says find the inverse of the function that represents the surface area of a sphere. Then find the radius of the sphere that has the surface area of 100 square feet. So let's write down the equation. It's S equals 4 pi r squared. What we want is the radius, and what we have is the surface area. So let's plug in surface area. 100 pi is equal to 4 pi r squared. Now we need to solve for r. So the first thing we need to do to get r by itself is divide by 4 pi on both sides. These 4 pi's are going to cancel out, and here 100 pi over 4 pi is the same thing as. Now to get rid of this r squared, we need to take the square root of both sides, because remember, square root and squared are opposites. So now we get r is equal to 5. I want you to remember, when we have an even index, which this is 2, we're going to have a plus and a minus solution, right? But this time, since we are talking about area and radius and feet, there's no way that we can get negative areas and measurements. So here we just automatically take the positive answer. So 5 feet should be the area. And that's it for today's notes.